right.
Well, his
I'll take a
wife
picture
and I
and see
both
what you
kind of
think.
agreed that you probably never would have jumped. Just some sort of great weight.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Take a look at that. See if that's good.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Very good.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet.
Oh, really? I've
You got very good seats.
These ones look
yeah. I'm kind of up on the balcony, right behind those guys.
Is this on? Yeah, there we go. Good evening. I'm Joe McCarthy. I'm Senior Associate Dean and Director of Degree Programs here at the Kennedy School. And I'm pleased to welcome you, many of you from out of town, to Cambridge, Massachusetts, our city, to Harvard University, to the John F. Kennedy School of Government, and to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum here at the Kennedy School. Finally, I'd like to also welcome you to the Richard J. Phelps 9th Annual City Fair. This is the time during the year that we dedicate to celebrating those great laboratories of democracy, our American cities. We've got a terrific panel of mayors here with us tonight, and we have representatives from cities across the country joining us tonight and tomorrow to meet with us and to meet our students. And so students, don't miss the chance to meet these representatives of cities and the mayors who are with us, especially tomorrow in the morning in the Nye conference area. This has been a terrific conduit for a number of our wonderful students, and they are wonderful mayors. They are wonderful, and they get great jobs in cities going forward. Finally, and I'll say many more thank yous later, but finally, one of the things that we count on here at the Kennedy School is getting by with a little help from our friends. The Kennedy School is the best school at Harvard. Thank you. And but by Harvard standards, we're a school of modest resources made even more modest over the last few months. So we do count on a little help from our friends. And in the degree programs, we have learned very quickly to count on a great deal of help from the new director of the Institute of Politics, the former mayor of Nashville, Bill Purcell. Bill not only is always front and center to help with any good cause, but he often takes over the cause, as he has tonight by assembling this terrific panel of mayors. So if this is the spirit that one can expect to find in mayors, then all I can say is I wish we had even more mayors here at the Kennedy School. Without further ado, I will give it over to Director Purcell, who will introduce the panel and moderate this evening's discussion. Sir, thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, let me begin by, on behalf of the panel and everyone in the audience, thanking Joe McCarthy for that very kind and somewhat shameless greeting and welcome, and I can't think of any better ambassador and cheerleader for the school, for the programs, and frankly for public policy in America. We're pleased to be here for this very special event, which has gone on for a number of years, in large measure because of the support of the Phelps family, but also of Joe McCarthy. Tonight, this annual event has a particular urgency, I think, because as everyone in this school knows so well, this is an urgent and difficult time in America. The focus as we began this process was to think, as we have a number of different times in this forum, in this space, about the economic condition of America, but to bring the special focus of these mayors to the effect of this economic situation on our cities and the people who live in them. The Institute of Politics has been devoted from its beginning to politics and the importance of politics. In my mind, politics is important, and you will believe politics is important if you believe people are important. These mayors are people who were elected believing and have continued to serve over a long period of time in different jurisdictions, but in their efforts and in their records, a deep and abiding commitment to people. And so they are the ideal individuals, in my opinion, to be here tonight to help us think together about where the cities of America are and where they hope and believe they may be as a result of the actions, some of which were announced just earlier today by our president as he unveiled his first budget. I will introduce each of them and give you some information about them. And then when I've finished that, I'll put a question to the group. And we will start we're going to work our way through this group in alphabetical order, and then we'll answer the question in reverse alphabetical order so that we can work our way back here. I will then direct questions for a while, and then as always, we will move to questions from this audience. And because I know so many people in this audience, I know it's going to be a good and focused set of questions. When the panel was first announced, we had had the commitment of Mayor Kathy Taylor of Tulsa, Oklahoma, to be with us. And Mayor Taylor was, in some ways, herself affected directly by this crisis because, as a result of economic restrictions in her own city, she had declared that there would be no travel by officials in Tulsa. And so, being a good mayor, she followed her own order and is in Tulsa at this time. But we were lucky to have Scott Avedisian as a terrific substitute. Mayor Avedisian is the mayor of Warwick, Rhode Island. He has been elected 5 times to that position. He has the incredible schedule of a 2-year election cycle, so you always know that Mayor Avedisian is running. If he's awake, he's running for re-election. He has carried that city broadly and widely in each of his elections since the year 2000. He notes carefully in his biography, and so I share with you, that he is a Republican who has championed human services reform and environmental protection during his time as mayor. He has felt that his most important accomplishment was in the area of health care in the city of Warwick. For some of you who may not have thought you were in Warwick, if you've ever been in the Providence Airport is in Warwick. And one of the first things you notice is a large sign actually declaring this is Warwick, not Providence, as you are leaving that airport. He's a graduate of Providence College, but more importantly, he is no stranger to this forum and to this space. He has, during the time that he's been mayor, actually, participated in 3 separate programs here at the Kennedy School, including our Senior Executives in State and Local Government program, our Driving Government Performance program, and our Innovations in Government program. He's also served as the president of the Rhode Island League of Cities. Next to Mayor Avedisian is Mayor President Kip Holden. Mayor President Kip Holden has that title because he is the mayor of Baton Rouge, but also then the president of the parish of East Baton Rouge. This is a consolidated government and brings, therefore, a much broader responsibility than would otherwise have been possible. He was first elected in 2004, re-elected in 2008. He has met an incredible set of challenges and had a significant set of victories and successes at the same time. Highest national rankings for job productivity and a favorable business climate during the time that he's been mayor. But what you may best remember him for as being the mayor who found himself as the closest large city to New Orleans after Katrina. It was Baton Rouge, the capital of Louisiana, and this mayor that welcomed 200,000 people in a short period of time, brought them in, welcomed them, made arrangements, cared for them, and now have still to this day quite a number of those families of New Orleans still within the city limits. So his accomplishments as well as his activities there are a model not just in Louisiana but across the country. He's also been previously a mayor of the Louisiana House and the Louisiana Senate before being elected mayor. Third is really one of the longest-serving mayors you will ever meet, actually. Doug Palmer is the mayor of Trenton, New Jersey. He was first elected the mayor of Trenton in 1990. Just to put this in some context here for us, Mayor Menino was elected in 1993. So he is, Mayor Menino is, we don't know.
He's older than me, though.
Yeah. And we don't know yet whether or not he will ever be mayor longer, but there are signs that he is at least attempting to equal your record at this point. Under Mayor Palmer's leadership, Trenton, New Jersey, also again a state capital, has become a leader in cleaning up brownfields, and this is something that Mayor Palmer undertook at a very early stage when, quite frankly, cities didn't know and the federal government was totally unclear. He rallied not only the government but also mayors from across the country through his service in the U.S. Conference of Mayors. He's received national awards on 4 different occasions for his environmental efforts in this regard, and still has the record of having done more in this area than any other city. He's a former president of the National Conference of Democratic Mayors, and also was one of the great, and I would say, since we served together and I had the experience of serving under his leadership, one of the greatest presidents of the U.S. Conference of Mayors that we have ever had. It's an outstanding panel and the perfect group, in my opinion, to answer the questions that we have. And I'll start really from the context of where we have been as cities. This is a group that, and like many in the audience, who know that cities over the course of the last generation or two have been in many different places in American public policy and in the consciousness of America. And that general statement applies across the board. But by a decade ago, there was a sense within the Conference of Mayors and within the cities that we represented that cities were back, that in fact cities had again moved to the front of the thinking of planners, of policymakers, and of people, that people were moving back into cities, were seeing their futures in cities, and that cities had again moved to the center as they had for so long been in America and obviously were around the world. At the same time, however, we are the places that have faced the effects of this economic situation most immediately and most directly, sometimes less visibly, but certainly more generally. The question is, I think, at this point before us, where do your cities stand at this point? The challenges that you're facing as mayors as you get through this year. How do you see the stimulus package playing out? Mayor Palmer, who was one of the early voices in the Washington Post and other places on the stimulus package, called it a down payment, which may give us some hint about where he thinks it is. And then how do you feel at this point going forward about where we'll be? Will cities remain at the center, the future, your own view of how your city will hold up during this time? And then that'll hopefully lead us later on into a larger discussion about the challenges facing all of us today. Mayor Palmer.
Okay, well, thank you. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. And I just want to tell you, I spoke at Princeton University on Saturday, and when I finished, the audience said I was excellent and great. So I'm not trying to put any pressure on you to compete with Princeton, but I'm just telling you the facts. No, it's great to be here again. I've had the pleasure to be here once before, and I truly enjoyed it. And it's really great. Don't start my clock yet. I have to tell you about this man right here, Mayor Purcell. He's a very good friend, one of the nation's former great mayors, and once a mayor, always a mayor. And I had the opportunity that we both had our last names end with P, and so when we'd always sit near each other because of the P's, so that's how I got to know him so well. And he's one of the nation's great mayors and done tremendous things in Nashville. I just met the mayor of Warwick, but I can see why, just being with him just a few minutes, why he was reelected 5 times. And this young man right here, the mayor president, and Mayor Purcell really talked about it. Can you imagine? You have a city, I don't know what the population before, about 700,000, 500,000?
About 500,000.
500,000. And then overnight, you have 200,000 people come to your city. I mean, that tests the mayor's leadership and also the community. And this gentleman here was his first term, and he did an outstanding job in terms of leadership and has sustained that. And I can remember just this last summer, we had a conference call, and I remember I called him because you remember they had another hurricane happen during the Republican convention. And the mayors of the country, we're a very close group, and we got together and we called Mayor Holden, and we worked it out. He was prepared and ready, and so was Mayor Nagin, and so it was great to be here. I just want to tell you, it's certainly been a blessing for me to be mayor of my hometown since 1990. And when you're mayor that long, and I was just thinking about this because I was at the White House with some other of my mayor colleagues a few times since the new president got elected. Matter of fact, I've been there more in the last month than I had in the last 8 years. But I've been through 4 presidents. 4 presidents, starting with George Bush 1, then President Clinton, and then George W. Bush, and now President Obama. And I can tell you that my city, which is a state capital city of about 90,000, where we have a strong mayor form of government, I can tell you that through each president, they had a dramatic impact on our city. Now, I've only was mayor just a year or so with the first President Bush, but under President Clinton, we say that President Clinton came in as a governor and left the White House as a mayor because he truly got it. He truly understood that the mayors are the metro economies. It's where the rubber meets the road. It's where we're directly impacted people's lives. And so as a result of it, if you remember, he signed through Mayor Jerry Abramson, who was the president, mayor of Louisville, the COPS bill, working with police chiefs and mayors across the country, and now Vice President Biden on the COPS bill, where we put 100,000 police officers on the street. But not only just the law enforcement side, but also you had a lot of programs, the empowerment zones, Hope 6. You saw summer job programs and investments in cities, and a philosophy about investing in cities, which you saw he created 22 million jobs and we had a robust economy. I'm not trying to be partisan. I'm just telling you how I see it. And then, of course, we had George Bush, and his philosophy was quite different. Of course, we did have 9/11, which impacted us. But I think we took our eye off the ball. And as a result of a whole lot of different things, we're in the shape that we're in now with our economy. I have a lot of hope, and I think I can say this as terms of mayors, both Democrat and Republican, in our organization that represent 80% of the population. Democrat and Republican mayors. I'm not speaking for this mayor here, but I'm just the ones I know, but I think we did mention some of that. We have a lot of hope because we understand that with President Obama, and believe me, I'm not trying to be partisan. I'm just telling you the way I see it. And the Congress, that we see this recovery as something that is needed and necessary, something that had to be big, because you have to have public investment right now to get people back to work, that we have to make investments in our infrastructure, make investments in clean energy, make investments in education, make investments in healthcare that will help stimulate our cities, make our cities sustainable and more workable, that will create jobs right away, but also invest in the future of jobs, whether it's in broadband, whether it's in air and wind, whether it's in biofuels, whether it's in changing public housing and school buildings and modernizing them and creating the jobs that go along with it. So we're very hopeful. We're very optimistic. And as mayors, people say that President Obama called us out at the White House. Well, he wasn't talking to mayors because mayors are accountable to the people all the time. What we're working on is how we get the money, access the money, so that we can put it out on the streets and do the kinds of things that were needed. So we're hopeful. Trenton's struggling, like a lot of cities. Our unemployment rate right now is 16%, and that's very bad. And I've had to lay off people this year, and we're struggling. However, help is on the way, and we're looking at doing a lot of training and a lot of investing that will create jobs in our economy. And like we've always had challenges in Trenton, but again, we'll make it, and I think now we have a real partner in the White House and in the Congress that will help us in partnering with the private sector to create these jobs.
Mayor Holden.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Cliff notes. But let me thank Bill and thank all of you for one of the greatest honors I think anybody can ever have in their life, and that's to be on the stage. When you read the history of this great place and all the number of people who've had the privilege that we're having tonight, it is really heartwarming. So I want to bring you greetings on behalf of the people of Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish. And thank you, because really this is an honor for me to be amongst my peers here tonight. But at the same time, this is a university I always wanted to come to in some capacity. And tonight is just like the little girl that was on the stage the other night, it's okay to dream. And so tonight, thanks to Bill, my dreams are realized, and I want to thank you.
That's
And
very nice.
just say, too, thank you. To my other colleagues, I have not had a chance to meet the mayor here, but this guy does not get as much credit as he deserves, because in the U.S. Conference of Mayors, we are a bipartisan group. You see a group of warriors from across the country that go out on the front line many, many times. And when you hear about them having to leave their families and spend as much time as they can, not only in Washington, but in cities throughout this great country, but also in countries across this great world. People don't nearly know one bit about the sacrifices they make. And Doug came in at a time that the mayor of in Michigan, Dearborn, Michigan, Guido, died unexpectedly. So Doug came in at a time where the mayor was basically running everything, and then all of a sudden Doug was thrusted into the national spotlight in order to run an organization, and virtually the flag never dropped on behalf of people throughout this country, and I want to thank him for that. But more than that, when we had Hurricane Gustav that came through Baton Rouge, and I'll talk more about that, but when no one even predicted the storm would come, and we saw sustained winds of roughly 90 miles an hour for well over 45 minutes to an hour. And the devastation was unbelievable. Most of the media was in New Orleans waiting for the levees to break. So there was no attention paid to Baton Rouge, and after the levees did not breach in New Orleans, the national media went away. Well, unbeknownst to them or not inquiring, we had a tremendous amount of damage in Baton Rouge. I can tell you that many people were without power, like you see in Maine, for almost a month. We had to institute curfews. We had mayors, though, that stepped up, and I can never say thank you enough to Doug for stepping up and rounding up mayors, and Mayor Diaz from Miami, Republican, Democrat, who rounded up mayors and said, you know, it is really a shame in this country that the national press and those in our nation's capital are not paying any more attention to Baton Rouge after the devastation that we've seen. If it had not been for their call and well over 100 to 200 mayors who responded, we would have not have succeeded as rapidly as we did. Bill Purcell's Chautauqua last year, this year here, got a chance to know him. But again, you have a great leader in light of the fact that his city was visited by our city to begin to look at models and things we could change in order to become better. And so he has been a great friend, and I thank him as well. Baton Rouge, real briefly, we are not facing the tough consequences, and I'll knock on wood twice. We're not facing the tough consequences that some of my fellow mayors are facing. This year, as a result of our revenues last year, we have a $13+ million surplus. We have defied the odds, and I'll just go through some numbers real quickly. Last year, we had an increase of 4,000 non-farm jobs. We had 700 new non-farm jobs just in November through December. That ranked us 8th in the country. We have unemployment at 5.3%.
Making me cry. Let me just get off the stage. Don't broadcast this to Trenton, please.
We're 5th in the nation in weekly wages, lowest percentage of foreclosures in the country. And then last year, we were able to bring in EA Sports, which made Baton Rouge the first home where they had in the United States where their tests of both the Tiger Woods game and John Madden game. We retained Shaw Corporation, which is a Fortune 500 company, by adding incentives for retention of companies. Then we also got Albemarle recruited from Virginia. They came, and several other companies. So we are faring well. We have given our police officers the largest raise in the history of the city. And we are still very vibrant. And over 90% of the business people in Baton Rouge say that basically they expect us to have a good year. So anyway, I just want my friend to know. I want my friend to know I love him. And we'll let you know that, you know, we'll always share because I love you. You're great.
Well, give me some of that 13 million.
But anyway, thank you very much, Bill. This man here. So.
Please, Mayor Abedizian.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Bill, for inviting me to be here. when you were telling the story of how we first met, I'm glad you told it inside there instead of out here. So I will again thank you for saving us when we were traveling throughout Israel, when some of us got off the regular tour. And it's wonderful to be with the two of you, and I guess I'm the city in between. We're not in dire straits, and we're not in as good a shape as Baton Rouge. Warwick is the second largest city in the state of Rhode Island. We have about 88,000 residents. We have right now over $400 million worth of public infrastructure projects ongoing, which is the creation of a train station that will link up to T.F. Green State Airport, which will be the closest air rail link anywhere in the country. And it's allowing us to redevelop about 120 acres of previously underutilized and underdeveloped land to really create a downtown Warwick kind of feel to the city. That, along with some other road projects and the reconstruction of an entire bypass road to be able to reclaim the village of Apponaug in our city, is about $370 million worth of public infrastructure projects that are currently ongoing. So the stimulus has one effect on us, the good fortune of having followed Mayor Chafee, who became Senator Chafee, who became the ranking Republican on the Environment and Public Works Committee, who followed his father, who was the ranking Republican on that committee, who were able to direct a lot of the T21 money and the transportation project to us, the reason that we have this intermodal train station project going and all of the other road projects. And the intermodal project is very interesting and really signature development for the state. Rhode Island has consistently not had any mass transit program whatsoever. And for those of you who live here in the Commonwealth, you'll know how long we've been working on this project when I say that as a member of the City Council, when we had to go to Governor Weld and ask him to change the regulations to allow the MBTA trains to actually leave Commonwealth property and to come down to Warwick Station. We then had to find a successor agreement with Governor Cellucci, another successor agreement with Governor Swift, another successor agreement with Governor Romney, and our most recent one with Governor Patrick. So we have been consistently persevering on this project, but it really will allow us to take advantage of what we have as a great asset in the fact that 95, 295, air, rail, everything coming together to really make that work and to redevelop that 120 acres in between the airport and the train station. And for us, you'll be able to get on the T here in Boston, come down to Warwick Station, where the flights are much cheaper than they are at Logan. Take advantage of that asset as well, but you'll come down to Warwick Station, you'll get off your train, go up an escalator, go across 5 segments of moving sidewalk and be right into the terminal. Prior to September 11th, we had actually worked it out where you would be able to check your baggage on the train and somehow it would magically get behind the counter and you wouldn't ever have to touch it again. That obviously has been thrown for a loop. So we're still trying to figure out another way that we can make it easy and effective and efficient to move people there. We have about $5 million in the bank at the moment. We're down a little bit because I had a school committee that overspent by more than $3 million last year that I had to make good on their bad debt. And then complicating it a little more is that the governor has proposed a $5 million cut to our community in general revenue sharing. He proposed it in January, hasn't been acted on by the General Assembly yet, but it would take effect in this fiscal year, which will throw our budget out of kilter. We've come up with about $2.3 million worth of regular budget cuts that we were able to implement. And then, as Mayor Purcell mentioned to me a little while ago, just this past Monday, we announced that we've reached tentative agreements with all of our unions. They came back to the bargaining table. They offered up about $1.9 million worth of concessions for this current year, no increases next year, major attrition numbers of all the positions that are going to become vacant that won't be filled will be down about 45 jobs, vacant positions by the end of next year. And so by the time that we get done with this new 3-year contract, our payroll costs will actually be $9.7 million less than they are today. And that's because our unions came to the table and were willing to work on things. So, and the stimulus package helped a lot, because there was a lot of, I'm sure as you know, people believed for a long time that, oh, the stimulus package is going to appear and we're going to have so much money we're not going to know what to do with it, and everything's going to be fine and everyone can go back to their normal routine and not have to worry about anything and not have to make any changes. As it went further and further and people saw that that was not the case, there was more of an urgency from the unions to come to the table and sit down and renegotiate. So fortunately, we can say that we didn't have to lay anyone off. Everyone was able to keep their jobs for this year and for next year, and the retirements that we're seeing will allow us to save money in years 2 and 3. So, a little nutshell of where we are.
The last time that cities dealt with the federal government in a crisis status, basically, and there was an immediate perceived need to move money from the federal government into localities, was following September 11th. Following that occasion, it was generally recognized that cities, mayors, police departments were on the front lines of Homeland Security, and there was a rather historic movement within the Congress, led by the President, to move funds into Homeland Security, which were to be directed to these cities and mayors for implementation. I'm interested in your thinking about how that succeeded. And is it the model for movement of funds for the purpose of stimulus and other programs now before us? And if not, what do you think will be different this time, Mayor Palmer?
Well, first, let me just say this. We are building stuff in Trenton. We got a little money in the bank, all right? We got about $500 million worth of investment going on. So we're not destitute. Not as much as you. Show off. But anyway, let me just say that the model doesn't work for cities. Money going to the state and then they're trying to give you the money just hasn't really worked. It hasn't gotten to the cities. If you want, anytime you look on television, whether it's in 9/11, you see the mayor there on television. Whether it was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where Mayor R.T. Ryback, you saw a bridge collapse about 1.5 years ago. You saw the mayor there. You see the governor. I mean, the governor showed up, but you see the mayor. You see Mayor Holden. Mayors are on the front lines all the time. We're where the rubber meets the road. But a lot of the times, the federal government sends money, and I can understand that in some instances with highway monies and even some Homeland Security money, but we're the first responders. The cities are the first responders. We know how to manage that money, and so the Homeland Security money, and the mayors called for it. First of all, the mayors in 2001 under Mark Morial, who is the mayor and president of our organization from New Orleans, we were the first to jump on board to have an Office of Homeland Security. We were hoping that office not only was needed, but you would get the resources and the coordination from the federal government to the states, to the cities. Quite frankly, it really didn't happen. It goes to the state takes their 20% off the top for administration, and then it's given out in a lot of ways politically more than where the need really is. I mean, we're a state capital. We've got the federal courthouse. We're the county seat. We're a big government town. Money should have been working through us on how we're going to secure all the areas that we have to do, and it just doesn't happen like that. And so it really hasn't worked. And if you look at other models, and the mayor of Des Moines, Iowa, Frank County, will tell you, who was on the stage last year, by the way, when we spoke, the money that they had for the hurricane, the floods in Iowa this past summer, he's still waiting on that money. Still waiting. It's not there. And so I would suggest, and I think mayors nationally would say, and why we were so insistent, not only pushing for the Recovery Act, but also that monies go direct to cities. I think you've heard about that. Mayors wanted to have more direct access to those funds so that we can go about getting people to work. We weren't as successful because a lot of those monies are still going through the states, and now we're going to have to work on how we're going to access that money through the states. We don't want the situation to be with governors facing very tough times in their budgets, as you see California, my own state of New Jersey, and looking at those funds being supplanted and used for other things other than what it's intended. or nor do we want, and I'm not accusing our governor of doing this, I'm just talking broadly, or we're concerned that we don't want to have the money go and governors will say, well, we've got 20, let's say 53 counties, so we give each county some of the money. We believe that it should go in areas that will have the best impact, that will help stimulate the economy, that will help grow metro economies. And so we're going to continue to push that we have more funds in a transparent way that go direct to cities for homeland security and others, because you can see our citizens go to city council meetings, they know how we're spending the money and how we can use that in the best way. So I know we keep talking about that, and I know it's tough because the governors are the governors. You got 50 governors, you've got thousands of mayors. But I think it hasn't worked as well as it can the way it is now, just all going to the states and then it trickling down to cities. And we're going to continue to push that we have direct funding to go direct to cities to help us in homeland security and transit and transportation, the job program, energy, and everything else.
Well, Mayor Holden, I think I understood your governor to say that he would not necessarily want to receive all of these funds. And given your report on Baton Rouge, it may not be as needed
I don't think they do need it. He was right. That guy was right. That governor was right.
On the other hand, the mayor of New Orleans suggested, and a number of other mayors acting through the U.S. Conference of Mayors literally this week, suggested that if, for whatever reason, money was not needed at the state level, that they would be happy to receive it directly at the local level, as Mayor Palmer just described. Do you have any thoughts on it from a Louisiana perspective?
Yeah, I would like to receive more money. Frankly, the state, I'll do a couple of things. The state tends to, if you and the constituents decide to pass a millage to do roads like we did, and so therefore we passed in my first year, we took an existing tax, a half-cent sales tax, where the mayor before me was basically using a pay-as-you-go plan before they would decide to build a road. So I use the analogy, if you continue on that path, it's like today I have money, let me build my living room. Tomorrow when I get money, I'll build a bedroom. And then maybe next week, if I get more money, or next year I'll build a bathroom. And before you know it, what you started has crumbled. So we asked the voters basically to okay us bonding that tax for 25 years. And they approved it by 70% of the vote. That gave us $500 million in roads. But here's the other thing. When you're doing road work, we don't have the luxury, I know in my area, of asking, is this a state road or a parish county road or a city road? When people are stuck in traffic, they want to know, how can I get this road repaired and get through this traffic? So in the $500 million package that was passed, a half of that will go to state roads. But the state is not reciprocating in regards to things that we would like to do to move forward. They did not give us any money back for that. So, when you look at the governor's situation, it's totally different in the sense that they will have a major problem. And I served in the legislature. In 1988, we were facing a $1 billion deficit. Next year, what is being kept a secret is that Baton Rouge, the state of Louisiana, could be looking at a $2 billion deficit, or anywhere from a $1 billion to $2 billion deficit. The sad part, the only two areas in the budget that are not dedicated are health care and education. So now this is where it comes back to bite me in my city. Well, in that diversity of the city, we have a lot of college workers. And so now colleges are faced with the most draconian cuts in their history. They're talking about closing down programs and laying off a lot of faculty and all of that. And so that unemployment figure that we're talking about today could be gone before the end of this year. So although he states that I don't want to take the money, or the money has too many strings attached, really get over the Republican-Democratic battle and understand that we have a city in dire need and a state in dire need. The city is not in dire need, but a state that needs to understand there are towns and villages out there who are suffering. They have road infrastructure and other things they can't pay for. And they need to go out and look at these places before they become ghost towns. And so unless there's an overall picture viewed by the administration as to what needs to be done, I'm afraid a lot of those cities will suffer even more. And the agriculture community as well, because the money has not been given to those areas. All we're saying is, give us money. We want to build a loop around Baton Rouge. Give us money for that loop. We've already put $2 million into a 5-parish project. And so we're saying, give us some money, some seed money, and we'll deal with the public-private partnerships to make it happen. And that's just like asking them something that they think you deserve to be in a crazy farm.
But along those lines, in the transportation area generally, and Mayor Avedis and you have obviously thought a long time about the opportunities that are available to Warwick and its airport, as well as the transit opportunities. As the President announced today that there would be a significant increase in funding, especially for high-speed rail, do you think that there is a real opportunity is not the right word, do you think it's realistic to believe that that money would move from Washington into those projects in time to make a difference on employment and in quality of life in your city or not?
I think it's going to depend on how they disperse the funds. Again, if it is direct to Amtrak to partner with local communities, that's one way of doing it that would be effective. If it was 2 local communities to finish our projects, that would be effective. I can tell you I'm very concerned about the stimulus money that's coming into the state of Rhode Island. The largest amount has been dedicated thus far to Medicaid and Medicare issues. The state just got a global waiver on the Medicare-Medicaid front, which has greatly affected the type of care that people's going to get. But there's a big gap of money that got created by that waiver that a lot of that is now going to go right over there. The governor has delineated that his second largest priority in stimulus money is for tax cuts. I'm not sure where that necessarily creates jobs. And he is a Republican, so it's not as though I'm being partisan against someone from a different party. But so I'm really concerned that this money is going to go into different uses, and before you know it, the people of Warwick and the people throughout Rhode Island are going to say, okay, all this big stimulus money got approved, where's something to show for it? And I think that the real fear I have is that, like when you do community development block grant funds and you try to say, okay, every agency that's looking for money gets a little tiny bit. And at the end of the process, you really can't show one project that people can really look at to say, there's a demonstration project to show that we can make this work. I'm afraid that the way it's being argued about in Rhode Island right now is that there will be no major project that people will be able to look at, to touch and to feel and to say, okay, so all of that money really translated into something. We're more concerned at the moment over who's going to be in charge of dividing up the money than getting the money out to the projects that are really necessary to move forward.
Yeah, Bill, if I could, let's face it, it's getting down to politics. And the difference between Republicans and Democrats, by and large, you hear it. I testified at a hearing, the House and Ways and Means Committee in October, a week before the election, with the governor of South Carolina and the governor of New York. And I never forget, I was sitting right next to the governor of South Carolina, and we were asking for money, that we needed money to help our city. And he was like your governor, said, I don't need money. And Charlie Rangel ripped him a new one. It was something to see. And the more he was ripping him, he started sitting closer to me. I'm like, hey, I'm not with you. And in South Carolina, they have the 3rd highest unemployment rate in the nation. If you look at Louisiana, Governor Jindal, they're talking about politics and they're gambling with this. He didn't want money for arts, culture, and tourism. Now think about it. You go to New Orleans for the arts, the culture, and the tourism, and he's saying that money's a waste. So I think what's going to happen as a result of this election, and who knows who's right, but it's going to be 2 different philosophies, and that was what was interesting, even during the stimulus debate. Tax cuts to do it or to invest. And so I think what we're going to see here, I'm hoping, and this is for America, because we can't afford to fail, folks. You know, if it was a Republican that was doing this, I'd be, yeah, let's do it. We can't afford to fail and have people say, told you so. We got to work together. And I think that the debate is going to show, like this mayor. Mayors don't have time to go through the ideology of this, that we're working right now within the U.S. Conference of Mayors, putting together an implementation on how we're going to get this done. The money's there. Now the big thing is the how. How are we going to access it from the states? How are we going to access it from the federal government in terms of competitive grants? How we're going to utilize the money and even tie it in with school modernization and public housing and what we're doing, how we can take all that money and create the training and the jobs that can help modernize all those facilities and homes. And the mayors, we're going to do it, and we're going to push it. And I was glad to see that Vice President Biden now is in charge of like the implementation of this, because we're all on the line. Rahm Emanuel said to a few of the mayors, he said, he's very colorful in his language, but I am too. But he said, your rear ends are on the line with this. And so we're going to come up with the how. We're going to continue to work and push. And it won't be the mayors at the end of the day, which won't know how to utilize this money. But that's going to be the big thing. And I think the public is tired of hearing the rhetoric and want to see things done, but they want to see it transparent. But it's going to be, quite frankly, up to these metro areas, metro economies with the mayors to really do it.
And I do have some hope, because in the Senate, it was 3 really moderate Republicans who joined forces. When you look at Susan Collins and Olympia Snowe and Arlen Specter, who said, we see that there's value here, forget the politics and let's move forward. That there at least was a sign that there's some attention out there to say we can't just all jump in either side and say, we're going to stick to our corners. Something's got to give, and we've got to come toward the middle.
And we also, in the legislation, there's a method. If a governor decides, I'm not going to take the money, Congressman Clyburn put in an amendment that basically said by a concurrent resolution, you can basically overrule the governor and his decision. So there are a lot of people, Republican and Democrats in the House and Senate in Louisiana, who are poised to make that move in order to get the money. But again, it's going to come back. For example, money was allocated to do X amount of mileage on one part of our interstate. Now you have a guy who got $110 million for that allocation to widen part of the interstate, who now wants part of the stimulus package, and he wants to go and do another 30 miles. When you have us with a $14 billion backlog in roads in Louisiana. And I think somebody has to stand up and tell him no. And the second part is we will be in the political mode as well. If the legislature and the governor try to divvy up the money, mainly the governor, but if legislators don't step up and speak on behalf of the cities in which they represent in other areas and say, wait a minute, let's take a really serious look at what's going on and where the needs are and prioritize the needs and make it happen. Because again, when we are singled out to say that you're on the line, if we don't get the dollars in order to make it happen, we'll still catch hell. And they can walk away because they will not be getting all of the rhetoric from people that we will be receiving. Because, yeah, we get some money, but on the other side, it's also ruled by the state as well.
And to make sure, I'm sorry.
That's all right. We're about to go to questions, so you all just be prepared for that.
But also to make sure, like I said, I have 16.1 unemployment. It's important that when the stimulus money comes, that mayors understand how to use it so that we can train the unemployed, the underemployed. Not everybody can operate a backhoe or a jackhammer. Certainly there's going to be union jobs, but we also need to make sure that the people are unemployed, that can be trained into weatherizing houses, and those kinds of individuals, they have to get work. This just can't be the same people that are once unemployed, now they're working again. Meanwhile, you have other people over here that aren't trained or educated to do things, and they're still watching houses being built while they're sitting on the curb. That can't happen, and that's why, as mayors, and Mayor Nutter from Philadelphia is one of the big proponents of this as well. It's talking about we have to make sure we're not just shovel ready, but caulk ready and everything else, and that we have to make sure that it goes to minority businesses, local businesses, women businesses, and that even the supplies that you get, the windows, the doors, that you look at making sure through your procurement process that it goes to your local businesses as well, so that they can take part in doing that. Why give all this money? We're going to build $2 million, retrofit homes for about $2 million, and we get all the materials from. You ain't getting no. You get it from Pennsylvania or somewhere else. We want to be able to make sure that our local businesses get that too, because that's the only way that this is going to work. And we'll make it transparent. We're putting all the money that we get, how we're divvying it up, who's getting it, and how many jobs on the internet, on our website, so that people can see it. But it can't just be the same old, same old. More people have to take part in this recovery, and that's some of the people that are on the bottom end that haven't been able to get jobs for a number of reasons. And then I'm going to shut up. That's it for me.
No, it's not. You have another 45 minutes no matter what happens. We have questions now from the audience, and this is historically the point in this forum in which really the most productive work has been done. The rules here are the same, event to event. You should state your name. You should ask a question that has a question mark at the end of it. And you'll have just one question per person. And let me start right over here.
All right. Thank you guys for coming tonight. My name is Chris Arlene. I'm a first-year MPP student here from Philadelphia and a big fan of Mayor Nutter. And as you might know, his administration is projecting a $1 billion shortfall over the next 5 years. And about 25% of our general fund is obligated to unions. And it just seems like everybody knows until there can be some type of pension reform and changes with city contracts, with healthcare obligations, it's just going to continue to snowball, and cities are going to continually be on shaky financial ground. So I'm just wondering what your opinions are. I know you are in a very good situation where your unions actually came to the table, but just what you guys think the legitimacy of actually using this downturn and the economic conditions we're in as evidence for why this really needs to get done. Because I would think that there's no better time than now to push that type of reform to kind of make cities more self-sustaining.
Remember the old adage that, don't waste a good crisis without using it as an opportunity. Right. We are in a crisis, so we were able to get a lot. We have wage reductions for the last 4 months of this year, no pay increases for any of our union employees next year, an increase in the co-payment on health insurance from about 5% to 10%, the giving up of holiday pay and uniforms and clothing allowances. The municipal employees are increasing their contribution into the pension plan. None of this would have happened if this weren't an opportunity to try to bring things together. What we did a little differently is normally I'd go negotiate with the municipal employees over here, and then the FOP over here, and then firefighters over here. This time we put them all into one room and said, look, this is what we need to save. Here are our plans. You may not like them, but we're not trying to be adversarial here. There will be layoffs if we don't get concessions. Each union has a certain percentage that they need to make up in order to keep us afloat this year and to move us forward next year. Here are our ideas. You guys take a week, go away and think about what it is, whether you'll agree to any of these, and if not, what you'd be willing to give up. And the key was, when they all came back, of course, no one wanted to give up anything the first time, and that's your typical negotiations. Second time, when one group started to move, it was very difficult for the other two groups not to match them. And having everyone in the room understanding that we were all in this together, it was no longer going to be a staggered contract where one was going to expire this year, one next year, whatever. We put them all together and got them all in the same time frame. So I think it is a good opportunity. People understand that times are tough. They also understand that if you have 90 employees, it's better to have 90 people making 5% less for the rest of this year than to only have 80 employees making what they used to be making. So it is a good opportunity. I mean, it's not easy, but here's a chance where people understand the place that we're in, and you don't have to convince people how difficult it is out there, because they fully understand that when you go into negotiations.
It is going to be tough. Mayor Nutter is a great mayor. He's only been mayor just over a year, but he's a great mayor, and it is going to be tough. But it is an opportunity with where we are, and it's also an opportunity when you look at a lot of the energy money that's coming out and looking at ways in which you can train workers and even try to get them apprenticeships and unions as a part of the deal on how you're going to use the money. It's not going to, I don't think it's going to be out of the goodness of their heart. It's going to have to be out of their own self-interest. Like, that's how most of us act anyway. But you're going to have to say, here's the carrot, here's the stick. And you're going to have to train more apprenticeships and those kinds of things in order for it to work. So, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but this is the opportunity to do it.
And that is in essence, well, go ahead.
Yeah, just basically add to that. It gives you a chance to experiment a little bit, but you better make sure you get some good results. For example, we're looking at now, in terms of taking care of our employees on the health end, for example, we will probably purchase a mobile health unit, whereby we will try to enter into an agreement with doctors locally and begin to have screenings and those things you need to try to catch diseases ahead of time. And so we're going into a preventive medicine type mode in order to try to get some things done and also provide free care where we can. The second thing, I'm talking about purchasing 3 units. One to deal with our employees and set up at different places around the city and parish. The second, the other 2 will really go out into areas, in rural areas and inner city areas that may not have access in order to get to the various clinics and hospitals. We're looking at that. We have a good working relationship with our police and fire, DPW. But, again, there's going to be a question for those at the bottom level in our Department of Public Works. They will be coming to try to get a raise again, but I will be able to take stories back that I'm hearing from all across the country to try to deal with them. But, there are a number of things that we will try to implement, but primarily to get the health costs down. We will look at the pensions to make sure we're solvent. But again, a lot of that depends on, with the state having the deficit it's facing, how much will they try to shift down to local governments and how much we'll end up having to pick up. And so those things are very, very critical to us.
Up here.
Hi, good night. My name is Rodolfo. I'm a Mason Fellow, mid-career here in the Kennedy School. I'm a city councilman in Guatemala City, a country where education is centralized. And I would like to know, the 4 of you, the advantages and disadvantages of education being locally run, and the impact that this will have on the economic recovery in the U.S.
Well, I'll take the first shot at it because we have a separate school board, and they will have to make decisions as to how they're going to use their money. But in the meantime, what is complicating the formula right now is they are in search of a new school superintendent, and parallel to that, the state is looking at taking over 8 schools in our parish. And so we have all of these things going back and forth. The bottom line is we do things with schools like we do literacy programs, we do summer feeding programs, and so we'll take our money and direct it there. We do a lot of after-school programs, so tutoring will ratchet up a little bit because, again, the state cut a lot of programs out, even in education. And again, depending on what they do with colleges, as I mentioned earlier, it could be quite dramatic and drastic. The second thing is volunteers. Believe it or not, we challenge a lot of companies to allow your employees to go and volunteer in schools. And a lot of those companies have stepped up, and they may allow some of their employees to do that. But at the same time, I allow, if you're working for me, you can take off up to 8 hours paid leave, but you must go and volunteer at your child's school or another school. And so we work hand in hand with a lot of schools already, but let me talk about the serious, real serious part of what you're asking. All of us buy, and companies come to us and say, well, look, I want a trained and educated workforce. If we allow education to collapse jointly all across this country, we're going to suffer. Even when you talk about what's happening at this university, we're going to suffer. So the biggest thing right now is to make sure we do everything we can to prop it up and form more partnerships with universities like Harvard, and begin to look at those internships tomorrow and help to bring some students to all of our different cities and areas in order to make some things happen. But it is going to be a very tough situation in Baton Rouge, I know right now, because of the turmoil we're going through in the school system.
I'm going to go to the next questioner, please.
Hi, welcome. Before I came here, I noticed that a lot of people are talking about the economy and we're losing money. But I can safely say, by listening to you people, I feel very rich. So having said that, my question is, on the docket, as mayors, where would you put the word potholes on transportation? Where would that, in your daily working conditions, where would be the priority for that word as far as...
If I could, let me start up in a little colder part of the country.
Potholes are obviously a major concern. We've had a very bad winter in Rhode Island. Our biggest issue is, not to be too technical, is hot patch versus cold patch. Until the hot asphalt plants begin to open again, you're going to see the bad potholes all winter long, because the moment we fill it, the next rain, the next snow washes it all back out. It's really a matter of timing that we have to have the hot asphalt plants open to be able to do that work. On transportation, I can tell you that we have a brand new mayor in the city of Cranston, Rhode Island, who is the community between me and Providence. The three of us, the three mayors, have all gotten together to talk about, since we have no mass transit plan and really no program in the entire state of Rhode Island, a whole light rail system for our three communities combined, which would then bring your first, second, and third largest communities into being able to move people back and forth in a much more effective and efficient manner. So transportation is one of the highest things, but as you know, and anywhere in the Northeast, with the downturn that we've taken in the last 5 years, maintenance money is gone. I mean, there is no money there to go maintain any buildings, any infrastructure that we have. In fact, right now there are bridges on Route 95 in the state of Rhode Island that they force large trucks of over, I think it's 1.5 tons. If your vehicle is over 1.5 tons, you must get off of 95, go onto 295 and come back, because the bridge is so unsafe, and with no plans to fix it. And even with the fact that all the stimulus money is coming, that is not the #1 priority for the state, which is amazing.
Actually, all mayors can talk about, good mayors can talk about potholes and asphalt with great exuberance for long periods of time.
And
But
trash.
I think,
And trash.
but I think that there is no disagreement among these mayors about what he just said, or specifically about the cold and hot asphalt issues and the weather. So
The things you learn.
we're going to go right over here.
How you all doing? My name is Ryan Williams. I would like to thank you all for coming out. My question is specifically for Mayor Holden. I'm a third-year student at Harvard College. I'm from Baton Rouge. I lived in Baton Rouge till I was 13, so I definitely sort of have a vested interest, I guess, in hearing you speak today. So my question is sort of on the lines of education. Both my parents went to Southern. I graduated from Southern. My granddad was a principal in the East Baton Rouge public school system. My uncle was principal of Scotlandville Magnet.
Who is your
Freddie
uncle?
Williams?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the school I graduated from, by the way, small world.
Yeah. So I guess my question, and just thinking about my situation growing up, speaking to my cousins throughout East Baton Rouge public school system, my question was along the lines of education. And to me, it always seemed like most of my associates and friends growing up who were high achieving went to private schools, maybe U High or some of the Catholic schools in the area. And especially with the influx of the students, residents from New Orleans, I want to sort of know what kind of initiatives, policy that was being implemented to sort of restructure the public school system so we're not seeing this misbalance with more high achieving students going to private schools and more sort of I guess, lower achieving students in the public school system, specifically African American students. And then also sort of how you think the bailout plan is going to affect education as well in our efforts.
Well, let me just go back to a point I made earlier. The school board is a separate taxing body, so we don't have direct input, but we do a lot of things. But here's what we're doing right now. At Scotlandville Magnet, our Department of Public Works will put on a golf tournament every year for the engineering students at Scotlandville Magnet. In the last 2 years, they've raised over $150,000 for scholarships for students who are interested in engineering. Starting in September of this year, we will take students in the 11th grade and 12th grade and provide internships to them in all aspects and levels of our government. Then, at the same time, if you continue to college, we'll provide that internship. Because what we're trying to fill now is a gap that probably most mayors are filling. They have a lot of people up here near retirement and then people right here, and then you have a gap in the middle because you have a talent drain that we have not captivated. And so we will then begin to try to put young people into those various jobs in order to make those things happen. And then added to that, we are taking a training program established by the National Guard in a place called Carville, right up the road from Baton Rouge, whereby we have already started taking young people who may be dropouts or whatever the case may be. They're working in our central garage doing auto mechanics. We're about to move to landscaping, culinary arts, and then healthcare. So we're putting all of those things in place. But added to that, you have a great future in Baton Rouge. Don't let this mayor here try to steal you right now, you know. That he's trying to take everything he can to get out of that deficit.
I'm trying to get $2 million from this guy. That's all I want, $2 million.
But you have a great opportunity because we have a lot of companies that are still locating there. And I think we'll have a lot of on-the-job training and workforce investment dollars, which we'll use from the stimulus package in order to train more people.
Thank you.
Let me go right here.
Good evening. My name is Leroy Foster, and I'm a first-year student here at the Kennedy School. And I thank you all for taking the time to be with us here tonight. All of you expressed concerns about the stimulus dollars being funneled through the governor's offices. So I was wondering if you can paint a picture for us of what an alternative process would look like that will allow you to access the funds directly.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we pushed when I was president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors was coming up with what we call, first of all, I got to say hi to my good friend Tina Flanoy. I don't know why Tina's here. She's a big shot with the AFT, talking about teachers. And we went to Africa together with President Clinton this summer. So it's good to see Tina there. One of the things which we did when I was president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors was have what was called an Energy Environment Block Grant. Because this was before the lights went out September 15th, you know, when everything changed with the failures of the bank. We were talking about cities not having the ability to retrofit buildings to go green, and that we needed a block grant modeled after Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, and a formula-based. And we said we wanted $10 billion, $2 billion a year over 5 years, $10 billion. And we pushed it. President Bush signed it. The Congress approved it, and we were very happy, but they didn't appropriate any money. Now it's in the stimulus, and Trenton's going to get close to $1 million. That's one way, having like formula-based direct coming to cities so that we can use that. And what I'm working on now is finding what we can do that will get the biggest bang for the buck in terms of creating jobs. For instance, we could retrofit all of our traffic signals to LED. It will cost about $350,000, which is a good investment. We'll probably save $100,000 a year on out. But that's not going to create that many jobs right now. So, you know, we're going to do that in our capital budget and try to get some grant funds. So we're going to use that million or close to $1 million, to look at ways in which we can create jobs to retrofit and weatherize homes in low-income neighborhoods. That's one way that we're going to be able to do it. When you look at direct money coming for the schools, to modernize school facilities, which we're glad that money was kept in the budget, looking at working with the schools and public housing, because they're going to be retrofitting public housing projects where there's a lot of energy that escapes, to look at ways which can have that money that go direct, but also target in a way that will create jobs, but also make these buildings more energy efficient. And then try to fight for highway and transportation money. You know, we don't need highways to roads where there's more deer than people. You know, we need to put them in transit-oriented villages, having transit opportunities so people will get off the roads, which is help the environment, but also create development in the cities as well, that it's targeted, is going to be sustainable, and also help the metro economy. So those are some of the ways that we've advocated how to use this money in a direct way that will also be transparent and get the biggest bang for the buck.
Over here.
Hi, my name is Lil Goshu. I'm an MPP2. I'm a resident of Louisiana, so this question's a little slightly targeted. One of the horrible things that is evolving out of Louisiana, it's rated last on almost every socioeconomic indicator, education. Baton Rouge actually has one of the highest HIV rates anywhere, top 5, you know. And the fact that it's mainly through needle exchange programs. But one of my frustrations is I know a lot of my friends, they can't find work in Louisiana other than dead-end jobs in retail. And there's a lot, among young people, there's a lot of strong discontent for government, especially in the delivery of public services. So I know that Louisiana and many of your towns are facing very volatile, volatile economic markets. So and it affects the delivery, of public services. My fear is the public, among young people, the public discontent because they don't feel like money is targeted towards them to secure their futures in Louisiana. And so I want to, hear all three of your guys' perspectives on what can be done to not only improve delivery of public services when there's an increased demand, especially with this crisis, on one degree, and second, how can you build public trust when there's dwindling and volatile funds?
Well, let me take the part about young people. Last year was re-election year for me, and then 1 month afterwards, I was pushing a $1 billion package on infrastructure. Everybody thought I had lost my mind, that in my election year, I was pushing $1 billion. We lost about 3,000 votes. We're coming back in October. But the driving force and the people who are rallying now, who said we are tired of other people trying to control our destiny, are young people. So this week coming up will be a meeting with a lot of young people who want to start going out into neighborhoods and forming organizations and forming speakers bureaus and all of those other things because they want to stay at home. At the same time, they want to make it more attractive to keep people there. So what we're seeing now is something that I've never seen in my lifetime in regards to the drive by young people, because the housing market is cheap for the most part in Baton Rouge, and they see a lot of opportunities. But in the same thing, now with young people, again, we're opening up our government, but there are a lot of small towns who don't have the luxury that we're having. That's where you have the problems when in the farming community, where they had generation after generation after generation. And this is happening across the country. When you're getting to generations now, they don't want to stay on the farm. They want to go out and try to find another job somewhere else. And they want to get away from that farm because, at least they can sleep past 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning. But the bottom line is simply, I'm watching the dynamics and the changes. EA Sports, you know who they're mainly dealing with? Are college students from LSU and Southern, and bringing them in and looking at promoting them. and we'll be headed out there to try to get more from EA Sports. So we're trying to put everything together to get that enthusiasm level up.
My friends don't like living in Baton Rouge.
I mean,
quality of life. I mean, I'm not trying to say that to be rude.
Let me tell you
but
what, that's a very small percentage, because I can tell you, when you say my friends, can you define?
Well, I would say that the commute's pretty, there's a lot of problems in Baton Rouge, I know, because of a lot of people from New Orleans coming up.
I just went through a 12-district tour, listening tour.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be mean,
No,
but
because
it's
I
true,
want to
based on my
set the
experience.
record straight.
Okay.
I just went through a 12-district listening tour. And there was not, I wanted to know the concerns and priorities for the people of Baton Rouge. Not one of them mentioned what you mentioned tonight.
Well, I can say we all have problems, and that's what's so frustrating about being a mayor. Really, it's thankless. And this gentleman, I tell you, people from my city would come and say some of the same things, or maybe even worse. They wouldn't be as polite as this guy. It's reality. That's why being a mayor is so difficult. We don't have the opportunity to put our finger in the air and see how the wind's blowing. And operate just on polls. I mean, we deal with not just potholes, my man, not just potholes, but education, problem with education, problem with gangs, drugs, HIV and AIDS, not enough jobs, lack of investment, a state government that's cutting money. I mean, that's what we deal with, and quite frankly, there are a lot of problems. I think, though, mayors are also optimistic, and I believe that with especially more and more young people being involved in this past presidential campaign and having hope, I think also when you look at the necessities of the day, our economy, we have to have people come together and rebuild and invest in our infrastructure, which was totally abandoned, to create jobs, to make sure that we can work out deals with unions on how they involve more young people and people, African Americans, Latinos, women, and others in those areas. I think now's the opportunity to do it. I tell you, I'm very frustrated because what we look at is being cut by the state government all the time. Our city's got cut $8 million this year, $8 million. And where are we supposed to, get that money? Because at the end of the day, by law, we still have to make sure we have police, fire services, and that we take care of people on the streets. So, my man, I understand your frustration, and mayors are as frustrated, but I believe that if we get the kind of investments and partnerships that we're seeing right now with this huge stimulus, and that it can do the kinds of things that will trigger private sector investment as well, and that we get young people, because government just can't make somebody want to clean their street or want to read a book to their kid at night. Government can't do that. Now, government can, with resources, do what we can do, but I think it's going to require each and every one of us to take responsibility and be accountable and help in what we're about to do. God doesn't make mistakes. I'm getting religious, but God doesn't make mistakes. I think that these are opportunities for us to change the way we're doing things and to begin to work together. And I truly do, believe that. And with some help, with the leaders that you have across this country as mayors, and with everyone's help and investment and money, I think we can start to change some of those things that you're frustrated with, just like citizens of my city are frustrated with as well.
And I'd like to encourage you to, the group that you're talking about, if they're dissatisfied, I can tell you it's not a lot, and I'm going to tell you two things. And I don't want to brag on myself, but I will tell you the truth. I ran for re-election last year, won with 71% of the vote and carried 333 precincts. That's every precinct in Baton Rouge. So there's not what, I don't want this audience to hear what you're saying as if this is pervasive. But on the other hand, what I'd like for you to do is to give me the resumes of those individuals or names, and I will call them and talk to them and say, well, look, tell me what it is that's driving your way. Because that's why I had the listening tour, to try to hear the concerns. And I will call them directly.
I think it's a disenfranchised, just the sense, this political trust, service delivery, and there's just a lot of people in Louisiana that don't believe in their government.
Now you're saying Louisiana. I'm just trying to get...
Baton Rouge. I'm sorry, but their residents of
Mayor
Baton Rouge.
Holden, the good news is, no, that's all right. We're going to be here for a while, and anytime the mayor offers to call everyone who's concerned You should believe him, and we'll follow up after.
I'm not going anywhere. He's holding me hostage. But he doesn't know my wife will not pay the ransom.
All right. We have time for, I think, one more question for sure. Please.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Tracy Williams. I'm from Mayor Sheila Dixon's office in Baltimore City. My question is more about the general overall sense of the stimulus package. When we speak of a stimulus package, we think of it as an investment in cities, but the linchpin of every investment is the return on investment. And so what I want to get a sense from the gentleman here, and also the sense that you're getting from the other mayors in the conference, U.S. Conference of Mayors, how are we going to be able to quantify that return on investment? And also, what do you think is your city's greatest potential for returning that investment for the future?
That's a very good question.
Well, the beginning of your question, I think it's incredibly important that projects are done quickly, that projects are completed. We have a wonderful track record of never completing a project. You know, you start to build a building and someone says, oh, well, you know, that's going to cost a little extra. Oh, then don't do it. We'll come back and finish it later, and we never do. So it needs to be completed, and I think it needs to be meaningful. You know, and I'm not going to pick on any projects that have been on all the wish lists that are out there, but if the first project that's completed doesn't have value to the community, you're going to see the cynicism increase even more. And it's very hard to tell people don't put that project on your list, but I think if we choose the right projects, we'll be able to show people that there is value added and that the investment is worth it. The other thing is that we need to realize that this is just one component of a lot of other things. That as the new budget got unveiled today, if the new budget doesn't dovetail with the stimulus money, and if we're not building on this each year, then you're not going to see the return that we should be getting. You know, the federal government is great to say, our new focus for the next year is this, so you start going in that direction and figuring out how you can make it work, and before you know it, the project is, the program's dead, and they've moved on to another focus, and you're still trying to figure out how to use the money that they gave you to finish this project. It's all going to work together, and I think for too long it's been disjointed, and the help coming out of Washington was good in giving us direction, but not good in giving any follow-up.
Let me just say, I think follow-up, number one, you have to make sure, because this money is not forever, that you don't put it in non-recurring expenses, which will create a double problem on the deficit side for the cities. The second thing is accountability. And like what we did with our road program was basically made this, and so every quarter people get a copy of exactly what we've done with our road program, and all of us know accountability is very, very important, so people can yeah, but so people can know exactly what's going on. But the last thing is put things with a timetable. Again, go back to what the mayor said. Put things right out there that people can see right away. And then I would go and hold a press conference every week. Each time I did a project tied to the stimulus program or service, I would hold a press conference or send out a press release to let them know this is a result of the stimulus money.
Mayor Palmer, the last word for tonight.
Baltimore has been blessed with great mayors. It became Governor Schaefer, started Kurt Smoke, my good friend Martin O'Malley, who took a demotion from being mayor of Baltimore. Now he's a governor of Maryland. I don't know why he wanted that demotion. And then Sheila, who's a very good friend and is a leader, along with Mayor Bloomberg and Mayor Menino and others, and mayors against illegal guns. I would say that all that was said here is absolutely correct. But what you can do is when you look at, for instance, in Trenton, when we get this stimulus money, how we use it to train people to weatherize homes, to deal with lead abatement in homes, so you're weatherizing, doing lead abatement, and when you can see and quantify how a person's home heating and cooling bills went down and what happened there. How many people additionally have you trained to do those kinds of things? And that's just on the energy side. When you look at if you retrofit the buildings, public buildings, and how you reduce your energy costs and what you're able to do with those savings, how you're going to do that in public housing as well in the schools. And then in terms of transit, if you're, like we're trying to finish a light rail that will go right through the heart of our downtown, through the City Hall and the state capitol, not just the jobs there, but the investment as relates to the private investment that will come as a result of seeing that, and reconfiguring our Route 29, which in the 60s thought was a good idea to get people out of the cities to the suburbs as fast as you could, and they put a highway in between the Delaware River, that's where Washington crossed, to beat the Hessians on Christmas Day, or we'd be British subjects now. It all happened in Trenton. Not everything happened in Baton Rouge. And, but recreate that highway network into our downtown, which will create, it's about a $140 million project, but it will create almost $1 billion of private investment. Those are the things that you can quantify, and those are the things that the mayors, quite frankly, we want to be the laboratories to show how it gets done. And we'll put up, and I can tell you, we'll put up how we use the money we got and what we were able to do with it against how the governors did it, and I guarantee you that we'll win.
There was a story in the Washington Post last week after the meeting that the mayors had with the President of the United States. And the press secretary for the President, some of you may know, said, if you're seeking to simply fund a personal agenda at the expense of creating jobs and using taxpayer money to do it, the President will call that out and stop it. And the mayor of Miami, the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, said, and I quote, "We get called out every day at the local level. We have plenty of constituents that will doing that before the President does." These are mayors who are out there doing the work. They are, I think, perfect for the purposes that convene us here. I remind you that tomorrow we will be together in City Fair here at the Kennedy School. There will be opportunities for you to meet with representatives of the cities of Baltimore and many of the cities. The mayor of Baton Rouge will be present. Others, as you can tell tonight, the mayor of Baton Rouge may be the largest single employer among the cities next year. We don't know that, but there's a strong possibility that Baton Rouge may be your home, and assuming that these other issues can be resolved, that I think they can be. I want to acknowledge the presence of Mayor Scott Lang from New Bedford, Massachusetts, who joined us here this evening, and thank Joe McCarthy, Sandy Hessler, and all of you. Please join me in thanking these mayors.